Yo, I'm Bob. Totally blind since birth into Marvel. Talking about X-Men, the animated series, episodes 3 and 4. Enter Magneto and Deadly Reunions. So Enter Magneto premiered on November 27th in 1992, and Deadly Reunions premiered on January 23rd in 1993. Thing I liked about X-Men in the 90s, if you saw it in 92 and 93, or thereabouts, it was unlike any other animated series. You have pretty much one and done plots and a lot of action based animation in the 90s. Your good guys are given a problem, they solve it by the end of the episode, and everybody ends it on a laugh. Whereas X Men had this comic book feel to it. I mean, it was pretty much like you were reading comics. Things weren't resolved at the end of each episode, and you have Beast here in prison, picking up where Night of the Sentinels left off. And he is having to deal with a lot of insults from these guards. They're calling him hairball and all kinds of other things. They're insulting his intelligence just because he looks different. And one idiot says, "Oh, look at the title, Animal Farm. He's just looking at the pictures." I guess there are illustrations in there, but I mean, come on, dude. Animal Farm is kind of an allegory. So Beast is just kind of taking it all in stride, and I love his character so much in the Marvel Universe. He's one of my favorites. I love when Magneto decides to break into prison and free him. Magneto being Magneto, he feels that he is superior to humans, and in spite of everything that Beast has dealt with, and in spite of what's coming later in the episode, he decides to stay in prison and eagerly await his day in court, as he so often says in season 1. And he knows how different he looks. And in spite of that, he has compassion for people who fear what they do not understand. He is wanting to do his best to explain to humanity that, hey, we may look different, we may have powers, but we're more like you than you think. And so he decides to stay. I mean, he goes as far as to place himself back in his shackles after Magneto frees him. And we get this really great scene with Magneto dismantling tanks and pulling all the screws out of them and pulling cannons into pieces. And I love that action scene quite a bit. We have Professor Xavier revealing his and Magneto's past to Jubilee. I like that scene as well. When I was, I think, 10 and watching the episode for the first time, I really didn't think about the Holocaust and that, oh, Magneto was probably around back then. I think when I was older and watching these episodes in, say, junior high and high school, I did make that connection. And of course, it was revealed to me in the first X-Men movie, because, I mean, that was, I think, taken from the comic books, that, yeah, Magneto was there during the Holocaust, and that's why he hates humanity, because of all that he lost here. And, I mean, they don't tell you about the Holocaust. I think they're trying to water it down a bit for younger viewers, but I mean it's clear that that's the war that he was involved in. At least that's what I always thought when I was a kid, and was revealed in the movie. I'm sure fans who had read the comic books put two and two together back in those days. It was a pretty interesting scene there. Beast's trial, man, that was one of the most infuriating things to watch in animation, because Magneto does have a point earlier on in the episode when he says something along the lines of, what chance does a mutant have being tried by normal humans? And it is clearly, as Wolverine says, it's not going to be Beast's day. They've made up their minds. They're waving signs around. I think I've read online that one said, "Mutants go home. We don't want your kind here." They're just jeering him, booing him. But Beast being Beast, he's not letting it get to him. And of course, bail is denied, even though, he tries to explain that, we broke into the mutant control agency because they had information on mutants. They were capturing mutants. I wish they could have mentioned that the president rescinded the mutant registration program. But yeah, Beast's bail was denied, and I think the only time he ever cries out, I mean, he doesn't even sound like he's scared or anything. He's pushed down by some jack wagon behind him, and I think that startles him a little bit. But he sounds like he roars when he's knocked over. But still, in spite of being hit with tomatoes, he takes what he's given. And Sabretooth's introduction was quite an epic scene there. I love Don Frank's performance as Sabretooth. And of course, this is all part of Magneto's plan as he is injured and he's taken to the mansion. Cal Dodd as Wolverine there when he's voicing his displeasure about Sabretooth. I love that scene as well. And then you've got Magneto deciding to arm nuclear missiles and fire them. I like that scene there toward the end of the episode. It's not much of a confrontation with Storm, Wolverine, Cyclops, and Magneto. I mean, he just blasts them a couple times and then flies off. He's clearly disinterested. I think he wants to give them a chance to join him. And Storm really shines at the end of the episode as she heads off and disarms the missiles once she gets the knowledge from Cerebro there. And by the way, I think I had the version of this episode featuring Iona Morris when I was a kid. That's the one that aired originally. I did get the version featuring Alison Seeley Smith later on. I think they would air that in reruns. I think I had both at one point. I would tape the episodes on TV because I liked the recaps at the beginnings. I thought that was a little bit of a comic book feel that they added to those. So yeah, the episode, I think it's, I give it a 10 out of 10. Let's see. So Deadly Reunions was actually the first episode I would own on VHS. No recap on that particular episode. I think you could also get this one combined with Inner Magneto as some kind of Pizza Hut release. My cousin had that one, and they had these little round table discussions with Stan Lee and other folks that worked at Marvel. But I liked how this episode begins. You have the trippiest mind journey, I think, that I've ever read about. I mean, like I said, this none of these episodes were given the audio description treatment, so I've had to peruse wikis online to see what's going on. You have Xavier going around in Sabretooth's mind. I like that he can walk here. I think he can walk, according to what I've been reading online as we see him in this part. And then they kind of fuse together, so you kind of have Xavier and Sabretooth fusing into Xavier Tooth and dealing with Sabretooth's inner demons. Cool cameos. I think we get to see Deadpool, Omega Red, the robot that eventually shows up in Weapon X Lives and Videotape. So really interesting, trippy head scene there at the beginning of the episode. And of course, Sabretooth is trying to hide why he's really there in the mansion. We get a really action-packed scene at Metro Chemical, I think it's called, after Cyclops is talking to Professor X about Magneto. And I love David Hemblen as Magneto. I can't stress that enough. I think he was such a great actor. And Don Francks just kills it as Sabretooth in this episode as well. And I like how Magneto is using Professor Xavier's compassion against him. Wolverine is trying to warn everyone, hey, this guy wasted some friends of mine, and you're telling me I'm misunderstanding him. I mean, Wolverine is making a lot of sense, and Xavier, being Xavier, he's thinking with empathy. He's thinking with compassion, and Magneto can read him like a book, and this is playing exactly into his hands. I like how everyone leaves the mansion. Wolverine is staying there. I think he's lurking in the background, and I don't know if I agree with leaving Jubilee with this ball of rage and claws, even if he is shackled. That was not a good idea, Charlie. Not a good idea at all. What a cool scene at Metro Chemical there. We get to see Magneto really going to town with his powers. He's starting all kinds of fires with the chemicals and whatnot. We have Cyclops, and he is knocked out right away. I like how Rogue gets to shine a bit. This is the first episode in which we see Storm having to deal with her claustrophobia. And even though she is a very strong character, I like that she's very human. She does have panic attacks sometimes when she is in situations. I mean, yeah, she's very powerful, but at the same time, she is afraid, just like everyone else. But I like how, in subsequent episodes, she does her best to fight through that. I think that's one of the reasons why I like her character so much. Rogue having to resuscitate Cyclops and getting his powers, love that scene as well. And then you have Xavier literally getting to the root of what makes Magneto hate and I would say fear to some extent humanity so much. I mean, we are flashing back with Magneto to those tanks during World War II, and Eric just can't take it. He decides to vacate the premises while screaming. I mean, people say Xavier screams a lot in this show, but Magneto, he can scream quite well. So I like seeing Senator Kelly here when you've got Jubilee and Sabretooth in the mansion, and Robert is declaring his candidacy for president of the United States. He's talking about internment camps, and I mean, that would be enough to make any mutant furious. And Sabretooth, this isn't an act. He really wants to get his claws around the senator's throat, as he says. And so when Jubilee decides to unshackle him, I mean, it's revealed that, yeah, he's been planted there by Magneto, and yeah, Charles should have listened to Wolverine. I always loved this part of the episode. Even as a kid, I knew that Xavier was thinking with his heart. And while it's good to do that, sometimes there are people that will use that as a weakness, which Magneto has clearly done here. Wolverine, of course, I like how he jumps in there, saves Jubilee. And I like that the concept of the healing factor is introduced here. We get to see Wolverine take a very menacing slash to the chest before Sabretooth is knocked out of the mansion by Jubilee. When I was a kid, Wolverine was slashed, I think, across the chest. When I was a kid, I always thought I heard like ripping meat, but I think it's just the costume that rips. I don't know. There might actually be a bit of a squishy noise as Sabretooth slashes him there. And I like how Xavier admits, hey, I was wrong. Magneto used my compassion against me. I was blinded by my own compassion. I'm sorry. This is a bit of a downer ending for the episode. But Xavier is attempting to learn from his mistake. Wolverine is in the infirmary. You've got Cyclops, who's recovering from having been knocked out. And, of course, you've got Magneto vowing vengeance at the end of the episode. I wish we could have seen him a bit more in Season 1, but we won't see him again until, I think, the final decision. So next time we're going to be talking about Captive Hearts and Cold Vengeance, so be here for those. So this is the second episode in which Gambit has not appeared. I wonder what these guys are doing off screen when they're not a part of the action. I don't think Rogue was in Enter Magneto, and I don't know if we've seen Jean in Enter Magneto and Deadly Reunions. I don't think she was in either of the two episodes. I've just watched those. Anyway, this video is long enough. I'm going to end this now. See you next time, true believers.